Hi, I'm Scott and I make games. This is day 2 of development on our game Pirates Adrift through space and time. Um, it's only going to be another short one, similar to yesterday. I'm expecting maybe an hour, maybe two, and we're only really going to do design work today. Um, so if you're watching these after the fact on YouTube or on Twitch video on demand, these are actually live streamed on Twitch. Um, And likewise, if you're watching them live, you should be able to find them all on YouTube after the fact at Scott Makes Games. So, with that said, I'll start with a quick intro to what this is, just really summarized. We're going to make a game in 3 to 6 months. The time frame we want to keep it as short as possible, but if it does end up blowing out, that's fine as well. The most important thing is that we finish it. We're going to make a full commercial release game on Steam. Um, the we're going to get into the intended design of it today in a little bit of depth, but the elevator pitch is basically that it's the Lost Vikings but with pirates. Um, we're aiming for 4 worlds and give or take about 4 levels each. Um, we'll start there and see how we go. See if that might be a bit difficult to achieve in the time frame we've set. That might be very easy to achieve. We'll find out as we go. Um, so, with that said, most of our stream today is just going to be in this page here. I will run through this quickly again. So we've got a short development cycle. I just mentioned that. Similar gameplay to Lost Vikings, but with pirates, which I'll elaborate on now. So, um, the Lost Vikings is a game where you have three main characters. They You have three main characters. Your goal is to get all three of them to the end of a level without any of them dying. Uh, at any point, you can only control one character at a time, and each character controls very, very differently. Um, so only one character can jump, only one character can attack, one character has a shield, and so on. And you can sort of see the dynamic in there. So all three characters will typically take a different route to the end of the level, and they will generally be opening gates and flicking switches and killing enemies for each other. Um, so with that said, we're going to yep, have three pirates, which we'll flesh out a little bit over time. This game is going to be single player only. I do normally prototype multiplayer games, but in the interest of time, I think that might be um, one of the more significant reasons for. Sorry, something just changed on my other screen there, and I had no idea what it was. Um, the multiplayer is a big time sink, and so hopefully by limiting it to 60 to single player, um, we can save a bunch of that time. I'm aiming to have a good sense of humor in the game, so wherever we can, we'll try and make things a little bit funny. We'll throw a lot of puns in there where possible. We'll throw a lot of visual puns in there. Like, I'm having a lot of trouble thinking of an example, um, but we might have, a phrase that sort of in normal conversation would mean one thing, and then on the screen we'll have just a totally different physical manifestation of that. Um, uh, I did mention that we have three characters, each with different abilities. You only control one at a time. Um, they have significantly different mobility. So I did mention that only one can jump, but one might travel a lot faster than the other one. Uh, one might just slowly glide down if they walk off a ledge, whereas another one might fall like a pebble. Um, or I had this idea last night. One of them can perhaps just inflate and just sort of float upwards. Um, and then, in keeping with the sense of humor, maybe when they let that out, it can be a big green burp cloud or something. Um, the characters will have limited health. So in the Lost Vikings, each of the characters can take 3 hits, and any source of damage deals 1 hit or an instant kill. So if they land on spikes, they die straight away. Or if an enemy walks into them, they'll take 1 hit. I do like that. We might tweak that to be a little bit different. We might not. That is a pretty good system. Now, even when not on screen or being controlled, so the idea there being that I think I mentioned yesterday, it's similar to Spelunky in that sense, where if something's not on screen, it's still happening. So if you put a character in a place where you think they're going to be safe, and maybe there's an enemy walking, from off screen, and you switch to a different character, well, that enemy's still eventually going to come and hit your person that you've left there, and they'll take damage, and you'll get the sound effect, and you'll see their health go down. The level just keeps happening, whether it's on screen or not. Or maybe you've got a person in one spot, and then your other guy flips a switch. Your other guy flips a switch and drops lava on them, for example, like those mobile ads we've all seen. The goal is to get each character to the end of the level alive. So to that note, we need to have a very quick restart. There might even be a dedicated button to it on the controller, which we'll talk a little bit about controls later on. It's going to be a side-scrolling game. At this point, I keep in my imagination trying to scope this game up and think, okay, well, you can have it sort of the level move around in an arc and follow the character, so it's always a side-on view of the game, but you're sort of not actually moving in a straight line from left to right or right to left or whatever. But I think for this project, because the main goal is to finish it and get it out there, we might just stick to straight up side scrolling. So the entire world exists on a flat plane. There'll be a little bit of background decoration and maybe occasional foreground decoration, but no bending, just a straight path from left to right. Nothing that we would have to account for in controls or physics or anything like that. We're going to go for a 3D blocky art style. So this is similar to the showcase on the block bench. I think that's what it's called. Block bench. Yeah, this one. And I know some of these have sound, so I will mute that. So you see some of these models here where I believe this software is specifically for exporting Minecraft models. But you see, if I give them a chance to load now, you see how they're very blocky, but they're not voxel. They have angled components to them and very low resolution textures. I want to make this game in that style. I think we can make it look really good. In the past, I've done a lot of work with voxel models, and I think doing this looks like a simplification of voxel modeling, and will hopefully not be too much of a challenge to get something that looks really nice. But we'll see how we go. We're aiming for very short levels. I think in this yesterday, I think I said 5 to 10 minutes to complete a level, and then I wrote down 10 to 15 minutes. That at the end of the day, that's variable. But the entire game, we're looking at aiming for a give or take around a 2-hour playtime, maybe closer to 1 hour. I'm pretty happy aiming for about a 2-hour playtime. So if we have 4 worlds and 4 levels a world, that probably works out to 7.5 minutes average level time. I think I didn't really do the math there. So we're aiming for 4 themed worlds. Now these worlds should be relatively easy to put together, and they should be also fairly interesting. So the first world and presumably the last world. So there would be like a 5th world that's like a welcoming home sort of thing. Would be like a pirate land, and what I'm picturing there is like the flotilla cities or the flotilla towns in Kevin Costner's Waterworld from the 90s, where it's just a bunch of bunch of habitats more or less just strung together that are just all floating in the ocean in one space. Um, and so you sort of just picture pirates, stereotypical cartoony sort of pirates out on the ocean, um, with this village that's all just floating and bobbing around and connected by string and sails and whatnot, and planks and so on. At that point, our not Vikings, our pirates will get sucked into a whirlpool, or some catastrophe will befall them, and they'll be lost. Uh, so then the other worlds, and this is not set in stone yet. We'll probably design some of this today. We might make a mood board or something to that effect. Um, but at the moment, I'm thinking of like an 80s suburban town in that blocky art style. I think could be really cool, and so we would use like Japanese. Uh, Give me one moment. I'm going to punch this into Google Images and make sure there's nothing offensive on the screen before I drag it over. What would we call this? Japanese suburbia style. Suburban landscape. Yeah, okay. So what I was thinking anyway was something along these lines where you've got just squarish, lots of wires and cables and roads, and I'm picturing kids on bikes, CRT TVs, just just real cartoony 80s kind of stuff, in a townscape. Uh, and then a lava factory I thought could be pretty cool. So a lava factory is effectively a factory setting that who knows what it's making. There's dripping lava, there's chains, there's catwalks, um, pipes that are just spewing red liquid for no good reason. There can be spikes and spike presses, things that are like who knows what a factory like that is making. But I'm sure we've all seen it 100 times. Um, so we could do something like that. And so I feel like these get less interesting as I go through. An ice palace. I don't like ice levels. I probably won't make that. We'll put a note here just to only make if no. Try to come up with better area. And then jungles. I think organics are going to be a bit complicated, a bit more complex with the art style we've chosen. It's not to say it's impossible. I just think that the amount of time we would have to put in to make a jungle look and feel right, um, would probably be better spent making something different. So we'll dig into that a little bit further. Either way. So 4 levels per world, sure. Each level should introduce a single concept and expand on it over the course of the level. So this is, actually not sure where this idea comes from, but I think Mario games do that, or maybe it was Zelda games. But the idea being that, okay, here's a new tool for you to use, and then over the next couple of minutes, you're going to figure out how to use that tool in a safe environment. Uh, and then once you've gotten comfortable to it, we're going to put a twist on it and expound on that, in a couple of different interesting ways. So at this point, we don't really have all of our concepts mapped out. That's part of what we're going to do today. Today, we just want to have enough of a structure put together that we can start making a prototype in the next day or two, and we know roughly what shape that prototype's going to be. So, um, this is again just an idea, but each character would have two abilities. So each character would have two abilities, a main ability and a sub ability. Um, so example, one can have a jump, one can have an attack. Like these are the most basic examples. I was thinking last night of having an inflate ability, so inflate and float up. Same button to release. So I mean these are pretty basic. abilities. And maybe one can have like a hook shot analog. Um, we'll dig into those in a little bit more detail, hopefully today. So here's something that I haven't set in stone. We'll probably give each character the ability to pick up and hold an item and use it or throw it. So I'm thinking, again, I come back to Spelunky for this, but the idea that you can pick up an item and you can walk around with it, and you can either use that item or drop that item. Now, because each of the characters are supposed to play totally differently, I'm not sure if that would normalize them too much and make them too similar. So an item example would be something like a key. That's actually where this idea really comes from. So if I can have each character pick an item up and take it wherever they want, then that can be that's a way that we can give players through the game to beat a level, just sort of picking up a key and carrying it elsewhere. We might actually, that might be a single, like one character can do that maybe. Pick up and throw items. Could each character have the ability to pick up and hold an item and either use it or throw it? We'll think about that. I wouldn't mind coming up with some more piratey sort of abilities, but we will do that. So the characters, I thought, okay, let's exaggerate some cartoon characters here, and we can have a fat one, we can have a skinny one, and we can have a small one. So the fat one I was thinking could be the one that inflates. So if I just make some notes here, could inflate, let out a burp when releasing. Small one, maybe the small one's the only one that can jump. And maybe the small one is immune to enemies. Maybe they just bounce off them. We'll have to think about it. There's a lot to think about. So last night while I was laying in bed, I just made this list of vaguely piratey things or mobility things. So we could have the inflate and float, which is one that I really like. So I might even actually make a second list. Wait on, how do I do that? Like, and then we'll make another one, we'll call it dislike. And I'll put dislike over there and like there. Something like that, I think. Let's get rid of the word abilities there. And maybe we'll widen this out a little bit. So inflate and float, say I like that. And we'll put a is there a block quote? So, you know what? Let's just stick with bullet points. So a little bit of an elaboration. Pressing a button could make character inflate and slowly float upwards. Touching anything that causes damage would cause the character to deflate. I know what I'm missing. We need to make this forward. And then player burps visible green cloud when deflating. Character. Just the players are people. Okay, so a jump. It's pretty straightforward. We will have a jump. And for this, obviously, pressing a button can make the character jump in true video game fashion. And then maybe this character, the one character that can jump, maybe they can hurt enemies by jumping on their head, or maybe they bounce off everything. Maybe this character can't take fall damage. Maybe the jumping character will just bounce. Bears thinking about. Maybe hurt enemies by jumping on their heads. Maybe the jumping character can bounce off interactive entities. See, I don't mind that. Okay, so the blunderbuss, I do like that idea. Pressing a button will fire a series of no, they're not. Well, not even a series because they'll be firing in parallel. Will fire a spread of pellets, decreasing in effectiveness as they travel. Pellets would damage enemies and flip switches. Some switches could only be triggered by being jumped on. I do generally like where this is going. So this one might be a little bit complicated. So if we say pressing a button will fire a whip or hook shot slash or hook shot or chain, how would we aim this? Something that needs to be thought about as well. If the hook hits an enemy, the enemy would take damage. So if the hook hits an enemy, the enemy would take damage and be pushed away, or be hooked and brought closer to us. Enemy could be pushed away or pulled closer to the player. Could depend on size of the enemy. Yeah, okay. So we could use this to maybe break crates, whereas one of the other characters might only be able to push crates. If the hook hits an entity, the entity would take damage. If the hook hits an anchor point, the character could use that to swing. So I'm thinking like a spike pit that's got like a bar in the middle that you could hook shot onto and swing across the pit. Whereas the other character could just jump, for example. Okay. What is next? The burp has been referenced up in the inflate and float. Harden, become invulnerable. Press a button to transform and become invulnerable for, well, not for a period of time. If I was doing that, I would make it be until toggled otherwise. Character cannot move while in stone state. Character so if they can't move while they're in stone state, character is much heavier. While in stone state. So we haven't locked any of these in yet, but so far. So I wrote this list while I was in bed, just sort of spewing whatever I could out onto a page, and so far I like what we came up with. Now that we've put a little bit more thought into it. So bounce from a fall. Yeah, let's actually drag that over to dislike. Crush from a fall. Let's move that over to a dislike as well. Now a cherry bomb, that would be like a pick-up-able item. Usable items. And can be carried by one of the players. And we could say example, key or cherry bomb. So the idea being that a cherry bomb would activate as soon as you pick it up. So if we say key, use while over a lock would activate lock. Cherry bomb. picking up would ignite fuse. Bomb would explode in radius after X amount of time. Bomb can be thrown. All items should be thrown, I think. Items can be used, dropped, or thrown. Boomerang. Boomerang, we'll put that at the bottom of the list and come back to it. I don't know how I feel about that yet. Fishing rod. So the fishing rod's a very piratey thing. I imagine pirates all have fishing rods. And this could be in here. It would have that kind of functionality. Now the hook hand. The hook hand, I'm not sure what that would actually accomplish for us. So the parrot. Parrot here, we're saying could be a companion for the smaller character. Parrot could lift character briefly. Parrot could fetch items, maybe the little one's the one that carries the items. We would have to put a limit on that, some sort of constraint. Now the cutlass could be a nice standard attack. So if we just say standard attack, so given to one character only. Could be via cutlass. Could be used to break crates, pots. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Be used to break crates and pots. Could be used to clear vines or something from a doorway. Deals a standard amount of damage to other entities. So as we type this, as I type this, I'm starting to get a shape of the structure of the game. So not just oh, these are ideas that we could be using, but I'm sort of seeing recurring themes in here. Like, okay, so we seem to have entities coming up, entities showing up in our game. Entities seem to have health pretty much universally. They seem to have a weight. So maybe the usable items could just be entities. Maybe the character that can pick stuff up can just pick up any entity. Maybe they can pick up an enemy or a crate or something like that. Um, and then maybe all those same enemies, or not all of them, maybe some of them don't take damage, but all those same enemies could be attacked by the Cutlass one, or pulled in by the whip and hook shot. So so it seems like at the end of the day, we are going to have just like a standard gameplay entity that responds to all this stimulus, and depending on what shape that entity is, it responds differently, rather than having a bunch of totally unrelated things. Um, so entities could universally have physics. We could rely on that, and then that way you could put any entity on a push pad to open a door. That can include a player character. Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's actually start that. Let's write that down. Let's call it a gameplay entity. Actually, let's give it a heading. Has health. Range. 5 is a lot of health. So I would expect most things to have about 3 health. So has health, has physics and weight. Can be picked up or pushed around. Can have own behaviors. Sure. So we've just sort of come up with that structure just while brainstorming these other ideas, and that is probably the first thing in the document that will be mostly binding. So this is why we're doing this, is to create just a little bit of structure that we can use to shape our prototype. So instead of just going in there and saying, okay, well, now I need to make a cherry bomb entity, and then half an hour later go in a totally unrelated direction where it should be related and say, okay, well, now I need to make a key entity or a crate, and just totally code those totally separately and in an unrelated way. Well, now that I've sort of done this, I can sort of see how they would be related in a way. They would share a lot of functionality, so they would all three be able to be picked up, and they would all three be able to be thrown. Um, a cherry bomb would be able to take damage and explode, whereas a crate would be able to take damage and break apart. Um, and a key would not take damage. Yeah. So that is why we're sort of making this document up, is just to define that base level of structure. Like not we're not going into massive detail, and we're not locking things down and setting it in stone. We're just trying to build the basic shape of our prototype out. Uh, so that said, the sash in particular would be, or sash would be, you would have that instead of a hook shot or a whip or something like that. Um, it would just be a piece of cloth. I actually don't know that I like that one. So a shovel, because pirates, X marks the spot. I do like that idea as well. So I didn't end up with anything in the dislike yet. Or have I just been deleting things I didn't like, maybe? Yeah. So when used, will dig up a spot beneath the character's feet. If there is an item in that spot, it would enter play. So that's interesting, but I don't think it's a core gameplay thing. I think the shovel might not be single use, but the sort of thing that you find in a level and don't take with you past the level, the sort of thing that the one character would be able to use. So usable only by character that can pick up items and can be found in levels where useful, cannot be carried. Or maybe it can be. So we'll think about that later as well. So coconuts, I don't mind the idea of coconuts. Coconuts would be a throwing item, purely a throwing item. So now we're starting to build a bit more shape around our items again. So we would have throwability of items, and instead of thinking, oh, should we be able to throw items? At this point, I feel like I've made that decision. Depending on size, can be thrown or dropped. A throwing item deals damage. Only good for a limited number of uses. Will generally respawn at a coconut tree. See, I like that. That's pretty cool. So we're talking here, the next one is about a shrinking ability, which I don't know that we need. I might even actually dump that across to there. But I won't delete it in case we do want to come back to it. Shrinking ability, and I'll say one character is already small. So we would absolutely put a shrinking ability in if we make our third character full size like the other ones. At the moment, I'm sort of picturing Big Mario, Little Mario kind of ratio there, where one character is just literally half the size of the other ones. If we were to sort of break the world up into tile sizes, I'm picturing the other ones to be like the standard 1.8 tiles, 1.8 meters tall, and then that one would be like 0.9 meters tall. So barrels, I like barrels and crates. Have I already made one here for barrels and crates? I have not. So barrels can be picked up and will roll when thrown. Will deal damage when they hit something. Will break when they hit something. Can contain other goodies. Okay. Can be stood on if not rolling. Can be picked up and thrown. Will deal damage when they hit something. Will break when they hit something. Can contain other goodies and can be stood on. So really, barrels and crates are siblings. So a barrel will roll, whereas a crate will just slide a tiny bit while the friction slows it down. Hit something. Will not break when it hits the ground. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now, cannons are a very piratey thing, and we might even put them in somewhere. Let's put them in down the bottom. So this list is becoming very long, which is good. That's why we make it. And these would be single-use activatable entities, not single-use, but immobile activatable entities placed at specific locations in the world could be used for locomotion. Maybe you could use it to travel to a background layer. Say you're traveling from left to right in a level, and there's a cannon that will fire you into the background, and that's a different level section, and then there's a cannon that will fire you back into the foreground at a different location, and you could create some interesting puzzles that way. Although I'm not sure what you could possibly do in a background layer that would affect the foreground layer. I'm picturing these being like, say, that's another island over in the distance there. Could be used for locomotion. Yeah, so that could be interesting. Sails. I'm sure there's something in there somewhere. Actually, we could use a sail. Could be used in a puzzle sense with a wind mechanic. So could be attached to a raft and blown across a gap, basically making a moving platform. I think I've seen that puzzle in Zelda games, but the idea being that you would make the wind go one way, you would get on the little sail raft, and it would go that way. You get off it, and there's something you can do on the other side that'll make it go the other way. So walking the plank is probably only good for a joke. Um, so a map. When I thought of this, I thought this could be just a standard ability that one of the characters has. So, for example, it could be the button that one character uses to pick up an item, the other character presses and just gets a full zoomed out view of the map. Hmm. And I will actually flesh this one out a little bit, but I'll leave it on that side. So we'll say could be a standard ability for one character. So the map could be a standard ability for one character. Press a button and get an overview. Get an overview, zoom out of the level, and we might revisit that. So an eye patch, more of just a theme thing. Breakable / pushable crates, we've actually already actioned that one. Now we're back to the ones that we put off before. So a boomerang, I do like that idea. I feel like we can implement a boomerang in concept without just straight up using a regular boomerang thing. That might even tie into the hook shot as an idea. So how would a boomerang be different to a hook shot? in that you can throw it and it would bring something back to you, Zelda style. The hookshot thing does that. Or you could throw it and knock something away or damage something. The hookshot does that. It would only ever be line of sight. The hookshot does that. I think we'll actually remove the boomerang. Okay. And then the hook hand, I will actually just drop over to that side because again, that's just a theme thing like the eye patch. Now that we've done that, we can delete that entire column, and we've got more space. Okay, so now I want to think a little bit more about structure. So we have a standard gameplay entity, or pushed around. Okay, and we're going to have, of course, locks and doors. Each door has a trigger of some kind. Each door has a trigger of some kind, and we'll even say, right, well, example of triggers would be a pressure plate, an actual physical lock, a switch, which would require manual activation by character, or a switch pad, we'll call it, can be activated by projectiles. Right, we'll make a new line for each one of these. Locks and doors. So each one has a trigger. Some doors may have a more complex trigger, e.g. water level or level wide condition. So we've got our locks and entities. We've got our gameplay entities. Got locks and doors that interact with those entities. We also add level static entities. These are things that don't move but do provide gameplay value. Things that don't move but do provide gameplay value. Gameplay interaction. Yeah, level static will do. Things that don't move but do provide gameplay action, e.g. A trap that consistently fires arrows or fireballs. And then obviously we would also, in converse to that, have set dressing may be lightly animated, don't interfere with gameplay, at all. Then over here we'll give our levels. Each level has a starting location where all 3 characters start. A level must be instantly resettable. That means if we're going to destroy entities or something, we should pull them in some way. Just to really minimize the amount of time it takes to reset the level. As an end goal, as an end, where all 3 characters must reach. Some levels may have a foreground and a background section that is playable. All gameplay happens in 2D space. Okay. At the end of each level, there is a conversation between characters. At the beginning of each level, there is a conversation between characters. What about collectibles? I don't know. I don't know. Some themed items can be hidden in each level. So, say for example, item themes would depend on the world. These are just bonus collectibles. They do not impact gameplay at all. What else do we need in this game? The characters themselves, of course. Controllable. Camera centers on character currently being controlled. Each has 2 core abilities. For now, let's just say unique core abilities. Maybe there's 3. So there would be a central class or data structure to keep our characters. Even though they would have pretty much totally different, well, I mean, not different controls, different parameters. The same controls, different parameters, and then the abilities themselves would be what swaps out between characters. Pretty much nothing else, just the ability and the visual, and then parameters for the mobility. We'll have to think about that a little bit more. Each level will keep track of that have been collected. Replayed each collectible. So if the level is replayed, only okay. What else do we need? I think we are just about done with the stream for tonight. I think we've got a good structure here to start planning our game, to start prototyping. So tomorrow or at the next stream, we will finally create our game project and start prototyping. Yeah. And I might, in my own time, give a little bit more structure to this section. Just really break it down into things that matter and things that don't really, or things that I'm locking down and things that are still up in the air and things that have been rejected. So that said, I'm going to end the stream there. So again, if you've watched this on YouTube, these are streamed live on Twitch. Yeah, I think we're making good progress. This has been day 2. All right. Good night.